welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook. Thank you so much for joining me once again for these conversations with musicians. And for this episode, I'm joined by singer, pianist and composer Adina Luumu. Adina's part of the trio called Luumu, which includes double bassist and sound tinkerer, which I think is a great expression for someone who clearly plays around with the e-bass and synths and things. His name's Simon Eiton, and drummer Andy Shilka. And they've also got on this album, there's an 8-piece string and brass ensemble. And that altogether, this is a collection of music that's just playful and jazz inspired, but it's also got this Nordic sensitivity, which I'm going to try to get to the bottom of in my conversation with Adina. What you're listening to now is an extract from Castle, which is one of the tracks on Elephant Love Song. I'm going to get to the bottom of the album title with Adina. They actually describe their music as a bit of a musical daydream, which I think is lovely. There are also music videos available online. I'll put the link in the show notes. So over now to my conversation with Adina Luumu. Thank you for joining me for Harmonious World, and I'm very much enjoying Elephant Love Song. And
thank you.
I want to talk to you about the album itself, but can we start by talking about the title? Because it's not the title of any of the pieces. So where did that title come from?
Oh, that's a very good question. So the title, I really like to have titles of the album which aren't songs. So that's kind of I don't know. I just like that because I wouldn't want to have one of the songs sound more important than the others.
Ah, yeah.
So I really like to have a title which sort of concludes the whole thing. And the title, actually, it was a working title. I just had to find a title. And that was just the first which came to mind. And it wasn't supposed to be the title in the end at all. But then actually things happened, like with my friend who died. And the thing with the elephants was sort of an important part between us. He used to always buy elephants for me. Whenever he would find things with elephants on it, he'd buy it and give it to me. And so in the end, it suddenly had this new meaning, and I had to keep it. That wasn't intentional at all. So I don't know where that came from. That just happened.
That's a wonderful story, though, because I think that's the best thing about music, is that sometimes it channels things that we don't know where it comes from, and it just appears.
Yeah, there are actually a couple of sentences in the songs which I didn't really know what I meant with it when I wrote them, but then they became that very important thing after he died. So that happened, but mostly in the title. And also, I really like elephants. So elephants are the symbol of something very strong, which I really like. And an elephant love song is sort of like a very strong love song. So.
Yeah. But I think elephants are also, they feel as if they're very peaceful creatures.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Because they can be, because they're so big. Nobody's going to argue with them.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you write the tracks for the album?
Oh, well, actually, it's a combination. Like one of the tunes, Fragments, which I think is one of the main tunes of the album. I wrote it in 2011. And I used to play it with my friend with two guitars. We had this duo which was played with two guitars for years, I'd say, yeah. And then I arranged it for a string quartet, but I never recorded it, and I just I just forgot about the song. And then during the lockdown, actually, I found it again because I had time to go through my old stuff, and I found it and realized suddenly it had gotten this new meaning with this like old world and new world. And I rearranged it for piano and string quartet, and then we recorded it. This is a very old tune. And then there's a couple I wrote from in between the last album, which we recorded in 2016. Yes. And I started to write new songs then. And a couple of songs like Crossfades, we've been playing ever since then. So we've played it now for 6 years or so. We're really tired of it. Yeah. And then some of the tunes were really just, I wrote them really directly before we recorded, so we just practiced once and then we recorded it. So it's like a
mixture.
Really, yes, very much mixture.
One of my favorites actually is Circle of Existence. I really like that.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's the new one. That's the one I recorded. I wrote it during the lockdown, and we were supposed to record right after, but things happened and everything was postponed. So but that's actually the newest.
Oh, okay. Well, that's I really like that one. Particularly. One of the things that I like about this album is that they're all different, although there's something that runs through it about that's, I think, your voice and the sense of, it's almost like a folk melody thing going on, but they're all arranged in different ways, and that's really nice.
Yeah, I like that too. I really like to try different things all the time.
Come sit by my window, I'll teach you.
This is the track I was just talking about, Circle of Existence, from Elephant Love Song. So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you learn your musical craft?
Well, really, from really an early age on, I started to play piano when I was 4. I tried things. Then I played violin for many years. And I was mostly classical trained back then. I mean, my dad's a musician, so we had or he's like a music teacher, so we had all the styles going on all the time, like really from Baroque to hard rock, basically, so everything. And but then when I was 12, I discovered the Beatles, and that was when things really changed. And I started to play piano in a more modern way, and started to sing as well while playing. And I formed my first band when I was 13. And then we played mostly what was hip back then. So that was mostly punk rock and blues rock. I come from a place where there's a lot of rock music. So we played those things for many years. But it wasn't quite enough for me. So I discovered jazz when I was a teenager, and mostly Oscar Peterson was like the first one I discovered. And I wanted to be able to do that. And decided to become a jazz pianist then. And also I always knew I was going to be a composer. like a real composer for orchestra and stuff. That was like, I always knew that. I think I was 5 when I decided to do that, but I just knew I wanted to be a musician on stage as well. So then I started to study jazz piano when I was 21, and I studied first my bachelor in Lucerne at the jazz school, and then I went to Copenhagen, and I also studied some singing in Copenhagen and Zurich. And then after I graduated piano, I started to study film music composition. So I kind of did the whole thing I wanted to do.
Yes. Yeah. And I think because you have all of those different influences and those different styles under your fingertips, I think that's why there's such a variety of genres, if you like, on the album.
Yeah, I can't help it. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very influenced by the whole music, the folk music and the psychedelic rock music from the 60s and 70s. But I studied jazz and classical, so yeah, it's a mixture. But what I think is very important to me is the lyrics. So for me, it's really important what I sing about, and that kind of makes it sound like more folk like,
yes,
compared to jazz or pop. So I think that's what sometimes confuses people.
There is that folk element, that storytelling, isn't there?
Oh yeah, I've been called Mary Poppins a couple of times.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so when you go out, when you play live, do you play mainly with Simon Eiton and Andy Schelker?
Yes. Yeah, we've been doing that for 10 years or 12 years, something like that. So we mainly play in a trio. Like since 2012, we play in a trio. But recently we started to open it up a bit. So we've started to play in quartet with a violin, but really just recently. And I really like it. I realize now that I've been missing this melody part in my music, and I love to arrange things. I mean, that's like the nicest thing on earth, to arrange my music, and to have another melody instrument is so nice. So now we're playing with violin sometimes, but recently we just played this big concert with string quartet and 3 horns and a trio.
Wow.
And that was so amazing. So I'm really trying to find gigs where we can play with 10 people.
Yes.
I mean, it was just, yeah. So all the elements which are on the album were on stage, actually. And so now I'm trying, I mean, I've been doing this for 13 years now, and it's really time for a little bit of change. So I'm trying to find gigs where we can play in different settings. So if necessary, I play alone. I don't like to do that so much, but I can do that. And then we can play in a trio, and then we can play with additional instruments up to tentet. Right.
Now, all of these tracks on the album are originals. I'm interested to know what would you do if you were going to do cover versions or standards and that sort of thing? What are your go-to tracks?
Wow, that's a really good question. I want to do that, actually. So my go-to tracks, I think, would be songs which have been very important to me.
Yeah.
Of course. But also maybe strange songs, songs which haven't been played that often. So do you want some titles? That's really difficult.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just, I just wondered where you would get those ideas from.
I mean, I think the first tune I'd do as a cover would be Here Comes the Sun.
Right. That's a great track.
But I mean, there's a great version of Nina Simone, so I would try. I think so. I was taught when I was a teenager that don't do covers unless you can make it better than the original.
Yeah.
So that's why I've never played Beatles songs. I mean, except once. I once broke my wrist, my right wrist. So I had to play gigs with only my left hand. And then I played While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Because it just happened. I could arrange it for one hand. And also Riverman by Nick Drake.
Yeah.
So I think I would play Nick Drake songs. I've had a band where we did covers with my sister, so I rearranged tunes for four voices and cello and bass clarinet and glockenspiel and piano, and we did Leonard Cohen.
Okay.
Yes, 3 songs by Leonard Cohen, and there are some songs by him and Judy Collins, even though she's doing covers as well, that I really like. But I also think it would be really interesting to try to do something with Pink Floyd tunes.
Yes.
To try to try something very new.
Yes. I think especially because they're very male, aren't they? Pink Floyd,
yes.
the way they perform, their production, everything is very male. It's very testosterone driven. So actually to do it from a feminine perspective would be very interesting.
Yes, I think that would be interesting with some of the bands from the 70s, like rock bands. So this is something I've been thinking about, actually. I don't know which setting, why I should do it and how.
No.
But I think I'd probably try to do something. I mean, there is one song by John Lennon called "How," a tune which nobody ever plays, but I think it's such a great song. It's also been really, really important to me. So I think I try to dig out some of those tunes by my idols or whatever, which haven't been played that often.
Right.
And there's also this strange tune by Elliott Smith called, what's it called? Everything Means Nothing to Me.
Okay.
Really strange tune. I'd really like to try and do something even more strange with it.
Yes, and I think the reason for my asking that question was because clearly arranging is something that you're very interested in and something you're very good at, because these are all, the arrangements are all very different, and that's really interesting musically. And so I think it would be fascinating to hear you do somebing else, somebody else's work in a different way. Yeah.
Oh, that's
there
nice.
You go. That's a challenge.
Yes, it is. I mean, it would be a relief for me for once to only just have to arrange things.
Yeah.
I would really like to do that, but I think this thing is stuck in my head that it has to be very good, and it has to have you have to have a reason, or there needs to be some kind of, I don't know, it needs to be evident or whatever. There you go.
I think
good idea.
Thank you. I think somebody like Jamie Cullum, another pianist, he does a lot of arrangements, and he'll play a song and you go, oh yeah, I really like that. I don't know when he wrote that, and then you realize it's by somebody really random, who did a like you say, a punk version or something like that, and it's like, he does it so differently, and that I think is when it becomes interesting. I'm less interested in people doing the standard, the American songbook thing in the same way.
I was bored by that during the jazz school all the time. So Jamie Cullum is a very good example. And I think I've discovered lots of songs because of him. So I'd listen to the tune and I think, wow, that's such a great tune. He just wrote another wonderful piece. And then I realized, no, it was Billie Eilish. So
exactly, that's right. Yes, it's those sort of things.
So he's crazy. A master at that.
So there you go. Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining me. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you,
me
Adina.
too. Thank you.
Where have all the melodies gone in a shape of blue? Where have all
Thank you for joining me once more for Harmonious World, and I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Adina.
which were yearn for
What you're listening to now is an extract from The Hope of Fools, which is the final track on Elephant Love Song.
we had known.
Thank you for joining me once more on Harmonious World, and do enjoy listening to a little more of this wonderful album.
Is it we who travel alone, who cover for the
Wherever you're listening to this podcast, could you just click on whatever link there is to share or review or rate, and just take a moment to either copy it to send it to somebody who you think might enjoy it, or to give me a review. I'd be happy to have reviews on any of the platforms. They all help people find me.
has all our conscience outgrown my intentions too? When has all our innocence cooled for its last tune? If we could hold what we once held in our hands like fools, we might have built a future on gold, and your words would not be so. Time moves on, and time must be long, like all treasures do. We will go and learn what we know, and we should do it soon if we could go where we once went to find.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.